Okay, whoop, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm really bad with timing and I'll talk a lot, so I'll just have a timer for myself. So if anyone wants to yell at me, know that my phone's already yelling at me. But hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing quite well on this beautiful day. My name is Jemarc-Axinto, and I have an anxiety disorder. And what that means is essentially I'm the type of person who tends to ramble on and on and on to compensate for the fact that I'm just constantly freaking out and I'm not sure what's going on and I'm not really sure if people actually like me. I mean, it's different being on stage, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I'm just assuming you all think I'm amazing. But as soon as you catch me off stage and we're one-on-one, I'm like, yeah, hi. No, I'm all right. Are you guys doing all right today? And the reason why I want to talk to you all today is because there's something very serious in our country and in our world that I think a lot of people need to be aware of. And if everyone could just take a quick moment and look around to the people next to you, to your left, to your right, in the hammocks in the back, look at each other and just think to yourself right now, whether you know someone personally, that 1 in 5 people in the United States have a mental illness. Every year, 1 in 5 people are diagnosed, meaning not even everyone is opening up and talking about it. Now, for me, I'm Filipino-American, and I identify as a guy, which means that I grew up in a world and a culture that told me to suppress my emotions. It told me that if I'm sad or tearful or hurt, that I need to just suck it up and tough it out because the world is so hard and there's always somebody that has it worse. There's always somebody out there who has cancer, or there's always somebody out there who's had a death in the family, that if I was struggling for any which way or any which reason, it means that I just need to tough it out because there's always someone who has it worse. And the first time I had to deal with a really difficult hardship in my life for me personally, and I've had many more since then, was when I moved. I'm a military brat, which means I moved a lot growing up, but the first time I moved, I didn't understand how to process those emotions. I became extremely upset and angry, and I cried a lot, and I was told that I just need to tough it out because things could be a lot worse. That's something I got really used to hearing growing up, either from family or from other adults or even from other people in my life. Things could always be worse. And I decided that the only way for me to really compensate and deal with this concept of, well, it could be worse, was by always putting a smile on my face. Always saying, I'm all right. And repressing those negative emotions and repressing those dark feelings inside of me. And the way that would manifest is on occasion, I would just freak out. I'd explode, I'd punch walls, I'd break stuff, but then I'd be fine. Everything's okay, everything's good, everything's okay. And I did this for years. I did it through high school, I did it through college, and I said, everything's fine, everything will be okay. Whenever things got bad with me and a friend, I didn't tell them what was wrong, and I built up resentment. Whenever things got bad in my personal life, I didn't say anything was wrong, and I started hating myself. And it really hit the pinnacle for me when I realized that things aren't okay, was my last year of college when I was in an abusive relationship. Now, as a guy, you're told, or I'm told, that guys can't be abused. It's not an experience that men can go through. And granted, while it wasn't a physically abusive relationship, it was one where every single day the person found ways to make me feel terrible about myself. I'm a dancer, and so I dance all the time randomly. Just because I'm feeling the music in my head or the music playing at any which way or any which event I might be at. And she made me feel ashamed of that. I'm someone who really values friendship, and she made me feel like my friends were terrible people. I'm someone who cares about family and family loyalty, and she made me feel like I was being way too clingy with my family, who, mind you, live overseas. And she convinced me I was feeling too clingy and too dependent on family that wasn't even around me for years. When I got out of that experience, I went back to my usual habit of saying, everything's okay, everything's fine, I'm no longer in this. And then I realized that maybe things aren't okay. You see, after you're abused, it doesn't end when your abuser leaves. After you're abused, there's an ongoing stream of consciousness telling you that you're not worth it, you're not worthy, that every action, every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Sorry, wrong song. But that every single thing you do in your life is wrong. It took me years, and it's still taking me time now to reconnect with the people I hurt because of my abuse. Because I was so convinced they were bad for me. And it took me admitting something that I never wanted to admit in my life, and that was that I needed help. And that was that it's okay to be hurting inside, and it's okay to have mental illness, and it's okay because having a mental illness does not make you weak. And that's something that a lot of people have trouble coming to terms with. Because it's easy to say, my leg is broken, I need to get help. It's easy to say, I have diabetes, I need to get medication for that. But as soon as it goes into the realm of, I get angry all the time and I can't explain it. As soon as it gets into the realm of, I'm constantly hurting and it feels like there's a void within me and I don't know how to fill it. As soon as it gets into a place where people look at you and don't see the pain you're feeling inside, either because you're forced to fake it or because it's not physically manifesting, you're suddenly too weak. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. Now, my fiance is an EMT and she's pre-med, and she expressed to me her concerns about how my fiance is not the person I was in an abusive relationship with. I just want to clarify that. But she expressed her concerns over how manic I would get. And she would express her concerns over how crazy I would be and freaked out over the littlest things. And she said, why don't you get some therapy? Why don't you take medication? Growing up Filipino American and growing up a man told me that that was fundamentally wrong. That if I have an issue, and if I have a problem, I should be able to work through it. Because while my parents may have grown up in the Philippines, which during their time is not quite as progressed as America is now, they were able to deal with a bunch of other stuff and not have to deal with their mental issues. So why couldn't I deal with something with all the privilege I have? Why couldn't I deal with my mental issues with everything being granted to me at the palm of my hand and, say, a cell phone? It took me a year before I finally said, you know what? I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to an outside source. I need to talk to someone who's not my fiance, who will just validate, yeah, it sucks that you feel bad. Or my parents who will say, hey, you got to get over it, but it could be worse. Or who will just say, but you're great, which, of course, they're my child. I needed to talk to a third-party person. And one of the hardest things for myself to deal with was taking accountability for my actions. Because when you have a mental illness, it's easy to shift blame for your experiences. Yes, a lot of what happened and a lot of my actions and choices that came directly from my abuse were because of my ex at the time, but they were still my actions. I could have found a way to get out of that experience, and I did not. And I had to take accountability for the fact that I put myself in that situation, but I also then proceeded to take actions against others without seeking help for myself. And this brings me to really the point of what I'm here to talk to you all about. When you are hurt, when you go through a hardship in your life, it's like losing a part of who you are. And I wanted to bring something here to show you all, but being anxious and worried that it wouldn't come here in time, I didn't actually bring what I meant to bring. But I can still make my point with this beautiful artwork back here. Everyone here, I hope, has some sense of who they are as a person. You might still be figuring it out. You might not be entirely sure 1,000% of who you are, but you have some sense of who you are. When you deal with hardship or mental illness, it's like a part of that breaks. It's like if I were to take any of this beautiful art back here, and I'm not going to the amazing artists up here, and we're just to punch a fist through it. It's like if I were to take any of this art up here and tear it up, light pieces of it on fire. It is no longer the same piece of art you would see up here. And when you have a mental illness, you're no longer the person you were before your trauma, before your abuse, before the manifestation of bipolar disorder, of schizophrenia, of anything. But it doesn't mean you're not beautiful. It doesn't mean you're not worthwhile. And it doesn't mean you don't have anything to offer the world. So what I did was, I'm a huge geek, and I have a bunch of Game Informer magazines because I love playing video games. And I figured I could get rid of these or I could find something different to do with them. So I took them all. And in a day of pure frustration and anger with myself and exhaustion, I tore them all up. And I destroyed them. And I said, this is how I feel. I feel like I had something that I knew what I was, like a magazine, and I tore it all up. And then I stopped and I looked at it and I went, I'm not this anymore. So then what am I? And I took it and I started upscaling it and building it into something else. Like if I were to take all this art back here and destroy it, and then take pieces of each one or pieces of the same one and build it into something else. Because that's what getting help for mental illness is. It's making yourself not who you were before, but making yourself new, using what happened through those experiences, using the pieces of torn up magazine paper, using the pieces of destroyed art. If you have a mental illness and you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it. And if you have someone in your life who you feel like might need help, don't be afraid to offer it, because having mental illness is stifling. Asking for help and admitting you're sick and admitting you're hurt, and also working up the courage to let yourself be vulnerable to someone, as I'm being vulnerable to all of you, is so hard. It has to take two parties to accomplish that. Now, the way I took the magazines, all torn up in all their glory, and built something new was I went to Michael's, and I bought one of those really pretty wooden boards, and I started rolling up the pieces of paper and using a hot glue gun, and I made this really cool piece of artwork from The Legend of Zelda, if anyone's ever played. It's the spiritual stones of courage, wisdom, and power, which I thought was good, indicative of my life, of just needing to access all those feelings and statuses or what have you. And at the end of this experience, it was extremely cathartic for me. Because I took something broken, like I was, like in many ways I still am, and I made something new. And as a result of that, I went on Instagram, and I shared this with the world, and I said, why don't we all strive to be made new? After the fact, I realized made new is something also in reference to religion, where somebody is baptized and they're made new. But my made new is much different than that. It's about being made into somebody more than who you were even before your abuse. It's about being made into someone maybe not quite strong from naivete, but strong from experience. And strength, for me, doesn't mean going up there and being brave and putting on a strong face. Strength to me means being willing to go to the people you love and say, I'm hurting. I'm not okay. And I want you to understand how hard it is for me to tell you that. Strength is willing to be vulnerable. It's willing to be open. It's willing to cry if you're a man who was told for a long time, why not just suck it up? Or if you're a woman who felt like you're not allowed to cry because that's like expected of you. Or if you're both or in between, if you don't identify in any which way. Strength comes from being able to find those you can be vulnerable with. And the best part is, those people who will open up to you, and those people who will accept you opening up to them, they're the glue that'll help you build yourself into something new. A beautiful new piece of art to face the world, forged in fire and pain. So I ask that all of you, when you have the opportunity, when you leave this beautiful day, beautiful event, and go forward in your lives, to use your strength to be open when you're hurt. Trust others to help you build yourself, and don't be afraid to be made new. Thank you.